I still remember the exact moment I thought my life was finally falling into place. After 2 years of dating Marco, he invited me to meet his family for the first time. His parents and sister were flying in from Italy, and I believed this was the sign I had been waiting for. The sign that we were moving towards something real, something permanent. I spent weeks preparing learning Italian phrases, buying thoughtful gifts for each family member. I had no idea that behind their warm smiles, they were laughing at me in a language I could not understand. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you enjoy stories about standing up for yourself and finding your worth, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Stick around because what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about love and respect. My name is Violetta, and I met Marco at an art gallery in downtown Chicago on a rainy Saturday afternoon in October, 2 years before everything fell apart. I was 27 years old, working as a freelance graphic designer, and I had gone to the exhibition alone because I needed something beautiful to look at. Life had been heavy. I had lost my mother to cancer 5 years earlier, and since then I had learned to carry my grief quietly while building a life for myself. Marco stood in front of a painting of the Italian coastline, and when he turned to look at me, I felt something shift. He was 32, with dark wavy hair and eyes the color of espresso. When he spoke, his English was perfect but carried a soft Italian accent that made everything he said sound like poetry. He asked me what I thought of the painting, and we ended up talking for 3 hours at the coffee shop next door. In those early months, Marco was everything I thought I wanted. He opened car doors for me, pulled out my chair at restaurants, and sent flowers to my apartment every Friday. He told me stories about growing up in a small town outside of Rome, about his mother's cooking, about Sunday lunches that lasted until the sun went down. I fell in love with him, but I think I also fell in love with the idea of belonging to something bigger than myself. A family, a tradition, a place where I fit. After 6 months of dating, Marco moved into my apartment. It was a one-bedroom place in Lincoln Park that I had worked hard to afford. I was proud of that apartment. It represented everything I had built on my own after losing my mother. At first, living together felt like an adventure. But slowly, I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable. Marco never cooked. He never cleaned. He never did laundry. When I mentioned it, he would shrug and say that in Italy, his mother took care of everything. He said it was a cultural difference, and I should not take it personally. I wanted to be understanding. I wanted to be the kind of girlfriend who did not nag or complain. So I cooked Italian recipes I found online, spent my Sundays scrubbing the bathroom, and folded his clothes while he watched soccer on television. He rarely said thank you. When I made pasta from scratch, he would take a bite and say it was okay, but his mother's was better. When I cleaned the apartment until it sparkled, he did not seem to notice. I told myself this was just how he was. I told myself that love meant accepting someone's flaws. I did not realize I was slowly erasing myself to make room for him. One evening, about a year into our relationship, I was washing dishes when I heard Marco on the phone in the living room. He was speaking Italian fast and animated, laughing loudly. I heard my name several times. Violetta. The way he said it made my stomach tighten. When he hung up, I asked him what they were talking about. He smiled and said his mother just wanted to know if I could cook. That was all. I nodded, but something felt wrong. The way he had laughed. The way he had said my name. I pushed the feeling down and told myself I was being paranoid. I decided that when I finally met his family, I would show them how much I loved their son. I would prove that I was worthy of being part of their world. The call came on a Tuesday morning in September. Marco announced that his family was coming to visit for 3 weeks. His mother Lucia, his father Antonio, his younger sister Gianna, her husband Paolo, and their 4-year-old son Matteo. I felt a surge of excitement mixed with terror. This was my chance to make a good impression. This was my chance to become part of his family. I threw myself into preparations like my life depended on it. I deep cleaned the entire apartment, scrubbing floors on my hands and knees, washing windows until they were invisible. I bought new towels, new sheets, fresh flowers for every room. I went to 3 different stores to find the perfect gifts: a silk scarf in deep burgundy for his mother, a bottle of aged Barolo wine for his father, a cashmere sweater for his sister, a set of building blocks for little Matteo. I hired a tutor for 2 weeks and learned 10 Italian phrases. Buongiorno, come sta, piacere di conoscerla. I practiced in the mirror until my pronunciation was decent. I wanted them to see that I respected their culture, that I was willing to learn, that I was serious about their son. Marco watched my preparations with a strange expression. When I showed him the gifts I had bought, he barely glanced at them. When I practiced my Italian phrases, he did not correct my pronunciation or offer to help. He just said I did not need to do all this. But I did not listen. I was determined to make this work. The day they arrived, I woke up at 5 in the morning to prepare. I wore a modest navy dress and pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother. I made sure the apartment was spotless. I arranged the gifts in pretty bags with tissue paper. My hands were shaking when the doorbell rang. Marco's mother, Lucia, was the first through the door. She was 58 years old, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe in one quick movement, and her lips pressed together in what might have been a smile but felt more like an assessment. When I greeted her in Italian, saying it was a pleasure to meet her, she gave a small nod and responded in rapid Italian that I could not understand. His father, Antonio, followed. He was 62, tall and quiet, with the same dark eyes as Marco. He shook my hand briefly and said nothing. Gianna came next. 28 years old and stunning in that effortless Italian way. She looked at my dress, my apartment, my carefully arranged flowers, and something flickered across her face. It looked like amusement. Her husband Paolo nodded politely, and little Matteo hid behind his mother's legs. I handed out the gifts I had so carefully chosen. Lucia took the silk scarf, glanced at it, and set it on the coffee table without opening the box. Antonio did the same with the wine. Gianna thanked me in English, but her tone was flat. The gifts sat there untouched for the rest of the day. As soon as they settled in, the Italian began. Constant, rapid, and completely excluding me. They would talk and laugh occasionally, glancing in my direction, and I would smile, not understanding a word. When I tried to join the conversation in English, they would answer with 1 or 2 words before switching back to Italian. Marco never translated. When I asked what they were discussing, he would wave his hand and say it was nothing important. That first evening, Marco took everyone to an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I was excited to finally spend quality time with his family in a setting where we could all communicate. But when we arrived, I was seated at the far end of the long table, separated from Marco by his mother and sister. The waiter came and everyone ordered in Italian without asking me what I wanted. A plate of food I had not chosen arrived in front of me. I tried to catch Marco's eye, but he was deep in conversation with his father. I tried to talk to Gianna, who was seated closest to me, asking about her life in Italy, her son, her work. She answered my questions with single sentences and then turned away to speak Italian with her mother. I sat there for 2 hours, pushing food around my plate, smiling whenever anyone looked at me, feeling completely invisible. The next 3 weeks were a blur of exhaustion and confusion. I became the unofficial maid of my own apartment. Every morning, Lucia would tell Marco something in Italian, and he would relay her requests to me. She wanted coffee. She wanted her clothes ironed. She wanted the bathroom cleaned again because it was not up to her standards. I cooked 3 meals a day for 7 people, cleared the table, washed the dishes, and then started preparing for the next meal. My freelance work suffered. I had to cancel meetings, miss deadlines, and eventually lost 2 major clients who could not wait for me to be available. When I tried to explain to Marco that I needed time to work, he looked at me with disappointment and said his family was only here for 3 weeks. Could I not sacrifice a little for them? I sacrificed. I sacrificed my time, my income, my self-respect. I smiled through every meal where I was ignored. I cleaned up after people who never said thank you. I told myself this was what family meant. This was what love required. I did not know they were laughing at me the entire time. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, 18 days into their visit. I was clearing the lunch dishes, moving quietly between the dining room and kitchen. The family had gathered in the living room, and their conversation drifted through the open doorway. I heard my name again, Violetta. Then laughter. Something about the way they laughed made me stop. I stood frozen by the kitchen counter, my heart pounding. I could not understand what they were saying, but I could feel it. The mockery, the dismissal, the contempt. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and placed it on the counter near the doorway. Then I continued washing dishes, straining to hear my hands trembling in the soapy water. Later that evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the bathroom with my headphones and listened to the recording. I could not understand Italian, but I could hear the rhythm of cruelty in their voices, the sharp laughter, the exaggerated tones. I needed to know what they had said. The next day, I made an excuse about running errands and drove to a coffee shop across town. My colleague Sophia, a graphic designer I had collaborated with on several projects, was Italian. She had moved to Chicago from Milan 5 years ago. I had called her that morning and asked if she could meet me. I told her it was urgent. Sophia arrived with her warm smile, but when I explained what I needed, her expression grew serious. I handed her my phone and watched her face as she listened. Within the first minute, her eyes widened. By the second minute, she had gone pale. When the recording ended, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. She told me she was sorry. She told me that what she had heard was horrible. Then she translated. Marco had said to his mother, "She is not pretty, but she cleans up after me." His mother Lucia had laughed and clapped her hands together, responding, "Well, she knows her place." His father Antonio had made a joke. "She is like a free housekeeper." Marco had replied, "Smart choice, right, Papa?" Everyone had laughed. Gianna had added that at least I was not demanding like other American women. Lucia had told Marco that when he got tired of me, there were plenty of better women waiting for him in Italy, and Marco had agreed. He had said he knew, but for now, I was still useful. Sophia held my hand across the table as I processed what I had just heard. 2 years. I had given this man 2 years of my life. I had cooked his meals, cleaned his home, washed his clothes, and abandoned my own needs to make him comfortable. And the whole time he had seen me as nothing more than a free housekeeper. Not pretty, but useful, knowing her place. I drove home in silence. When I walked through the door, the family was gathered in the living room, talking and laughing. Marco smiled at me and asked if I had a good time running errands. I smiled back and said yes. Then I excused myself to take a shower. I locked the bathroom door, turned on the water, and sank to the floor. The tears came hard and fast, but I did not make a sound. I had learned a long time ago how to cry without anyone hearing. 2 years of loving someone who thought I was beneath him. 2 years of trying to be enough for people who saw me as the help. The pain was overwhelming, but somewhere beneath the pain, something else was rising. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, quiet kind. The kind that makes you think clearly. The kind that makes you plan. I stayed in that bathroom for an hour. When I came out, my eyes were dry, and my mind was made up. They had 5 more days before they flew back to Italy. 5 more days of smiling at me while mocking me in their language. They thought I was oblivious. They thought I was stupid. They had no idea what was coming. The next 5 days required the greatest performance of my life. I smiled. I cooked. I cleaned. I nodded along to conversations I could not understand. But behind closed doors, I was dismantling my life with Marco piece by piece. I contacted my former clients, apologized for my absence, and secured new projects with extended deadlines. I found a studio apartment in Wicker Park that was available for immediate move-in and signed the lease using money I had saved in a separate account Marco knew nothing about. Every day while the family went sightseeing, I moved boxes of my belongings to Sophia's garage. My mother's jewelry, my important documents, the artwork I had collected over the years. Everything that mattered to me slowly disappeared from the apartment Marco thought we shared. I also prepared my goodbye. I wrote a speech 3 paragraphs long, saying everything I wanted them to hear. Then I sent it to Sophia, who translated it into perfect Italian and recorded herself reading it so I could play it at the right moment. I listened to that recording dozens of times, memorizing the rhythm of the words I could not understand, imagining the looks on their faces when they heard it. Their last night in Chicago arrived. I announced that I wanted to cook a special farewell dinner to thank them for visiting. Lucia looked surprised, but pleased. She probably thought I was finally accepting my role as the family servant. Marco seemed touched. He kissed my cheek and said I was the best girlfriend anyone could ask for. I spent all day in the kitchen preparing an elaborate Italian meal. Antipasto with imported meats and cheeses, homemade ravioli with sage butter, tiramisu for dessert. I set the table with candles and the good china. I wanted everything to be perfect. Not for them, for me. When everyone was seated and the wine was poured, I stood up and said I had prepared something special. Marco looked at me curiously. Lucia raised an eyebrow. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the Bluetooth speaker, and pressed play. Sophia's voice filled the room, speaking in fluent Italian. The first sentence thanked them for opening my eyes. The second sentence explained that I had recorded their conversation from last Thursday. The third sentence repeated word for word what Marco had said about me. She is not pretty, but she cleans up after me. Lucia's translated words followed. Well, she knows her place. Then Antonio's joke about the free housekeeper. Then Marco's response about making a smart choice. I watched their faces transform. Marco went white. Lucia's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Gianna's mouth fell open. Antonio stared at the speaker as if it had personally betrayed him. The recording continued, repeating every cruel word they had spoken, every laugh at my expense, every dismissive comment about my worth. When it ended, silence filled the room. Marco started to speak, reaching for my hand, saying my name in that accent I used to love. I pulled away and held up my hand to stop him. I spoke in English, then slowly and clearly, so there would be no misunderstanding. I told them that I had understood nothing when they mocked me, but I understand everything now. I told them that I am not a housekeeper. I am not a servant. I am not a pathetic woman who does not know her own worth. I told Marco that the apartment belonged to me, and he had until tomorrow evening to pack his things and leave. Then I placed my apartment key on the table. I told them I would be staying with a friend tonight. When I returned tomorrow, I expected the apartment to be empty. I picked up my purse, walked to the door, and paused. I turned back one last time and looked at Marco, who had tears streaming down his face. I said that for 2 years, I thought I was not enough for him. Now I realized he was never enough for me. Then I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. I did not slam it. I did not need to. The statement had been made. The days that followed were not easy. When I returned to my apartment the next evening, Marco was gone. He had left a letter on the kitchen counter, 5 pages of apologies and explanations, and promises to change. I read the first paragraph and threw the rest away without finishing. The text messages started immediately. Marco sent dozens every day apologizing, begging, crying through voice messages about how much he loved me and how his family's words did not represent his true feelings. He said they were just joking. He said Italian families talked like that. He said I was overreacting. I did not respond to a single message. After 3 days, I blocked his number. I blocked his email. I blocked him on every social media platform. I blocked his mother, his father, his sister, and even his brother-in-law. I erased every trace of his existence from my digital life. The first month was brutal. I would wake up in my new studio apartment, reach for someone who was not there, and remember all over again what had happened. I cried in the shower. I cried while cooking dinner for one. I cried at random moments when a song came on, or I passed the art gallery where we had met. Grief is strange that way. Even when you know someone is not worthy of your tears, your heart still mourns what you thought you had. But slowly, something began to shift. I threw myself into my work, taking on more freelance projects than ever before. I redecorated my studio in colors I loved, not colors that Marco had chosen. I started cooking recipes my mother used to make, filling my small space with the smells of my own childhood instead of trying to recreate someone else's. Sophia became a true friend during this time. We started meeting for coffee every Saturday, and our conversations helped me process everything I had experienced. She introduced me to her circle of friends, artists and designers and writers who welcomed me into their group without question. For the first time in 2 years, I had people in my life who saw me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. 3 months after I walked out of that dinner, I enrolled in an Italian language course. Not because I wanted to understand Marco or his family, but because I refused to let their cruelty ruin something beautiful. Italian is a gorgeous language, full of music and passion. I wanted to reclaim it for myself. One evening, while practicing verb conjugations at my kitchen table, I realized something important. The girl who had spent 2 years trying to earn love by shrinking herself, by serving others, by accepting crumbs of affection and calling them a feast, that girl was gone. In her place was a woman who understood that love should never require you to abandon your dignity. Marco still tries to contact me sometimes through new accounts, through mutual acquaintances, through letters sent to my old address that get forwarded to me. Last week, he sent a message that managed to get through before I could block the new account. He was crying in the message, saying he had made the biggest mistake of his life, saying he would do anything to have me back. I deleted it without responding. His tears are not my responsibility. His regret is not my concern. He is facing the consequences of treating someone as less than human, and those consequences do not include my forgiveness. As I sit here now in my cozy studio apartment with my Italian textbook spread across the table and the smell of my mother's chicken soup filling the air, I feel something I have not felt in a long time. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger, self-respect. Self-love. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own worth and refusing to accept less. Here is what I have learned. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you become your greatest teachers, but not in the way they intended. Marco and his family taught me that I deserve a partner who is proud to be with me, not someone who mocks me when he thinks I cannot understand. They taught me that being useful is not the same as being valued. They taught me that smiling through disrespect does not make you a good girlfriend. It makes you invisible. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, please hear me. You are not a housekeeper. You are not a servant. You are not someone's convenient option until something better comes along. You deserve love that celebrates you, not love that tolerates you while laughing behind your back. I want to ask you something before I go. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was speaking about you in ways that broke your heart? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding your strength and knowing your worth. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know whose life you might change by passing along a message of hope. Thank you for spending this time with me and for being part of this community. I am sending you all warmth, courage, and the reminder that you deserve love that makes you feel like the incredible person you truly are. Take care of yourselves and remember that knowing when to walk away is not giving up. It is choosing yourself.